Once you've ruled out the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true.
And it is not a question of a little occultism or a touch of mysticism, Mr. Denton. It is vampires, and there's a host of damned souls at Telepath.
I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night.
Here, the old gods aren't dead.
And what of the true god?
He's dead. Can't complain.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
You're listening to Paranormal UK Radio.
Hi everybody, this is Irene and Mark, the host of the Paranormal UK radio show, the flagship show from the Paranormal UK radio network. And with me is, oh God,
say my name.
Marky Johnson.
Say my name.
Mark Johnson.
Just like Walter White in Breaking Bad, say my name.
Yeah, I'll say your name, all right, Markle Farkle. Mark Johnson. There you go. Now, I just got a brain block. You know, I done the actual Paranormal UK radio show, flagship show of the Paranormal UK radio network, 100% correct, without any takes, and that threw me on your name.
Huh.
There you go. Right. Okay, that's over and done with. We're back. We're back.
We're back. And so how are you feeling after coming off of the COVID-19 virus?
Oh, I feel absolutely fantastic. A lot better than I was. Mind you, it took some weeks, Mark. You know, they say this is a week or a fortnight, but it isn't. It drags you down. Poor old Boris is still suffering from it, and he's been out of hospital now for a week. You know, he's not back at work yet. But it really does drag you down, and you get all these little after effects from it. But like I said, sorry about this, people. You may hear a bell ring every now and then, and you may hear a squawking banshee, but that's Pickles Pee-wee the parrot in the background, because I just didn't have the strength to move him today into the hallway. So he's here in the room with me. But that's, you know, that's because we've been doing so much gardening. And now I've got a bad back.
Uh-oh. So first you go from being, you know, sick for a couple of weeks with the coronavirus.
I think it was about nearly a month, wasn't it? Or about a month in all.
All in all, yeah. I hear that's the one thing. It just stays with you, and then even when you think you're over it, all of a sudden it just comes back.
That's right, it does. And, you know, it's one of the nastiest things out. I'm a strong person. Normally I'm a strong person, but this thing knocked me for 6. And if it can do it to me, what's it doing to others? You know, and all these poor people losing their lives.
People are dying. I mean, you know, this is where I go back and forth. This is where I'm torn, because yes, people are dying. Yes, this thing is very infectious. At the same time,
it is a lot worse than the ordinary flu, because they, you know, I know you're going to say that. I'm psychic. I know you.
Well, I mean, more people are surviving this. It's a smaller percentage of people. It's not even 25%. It's like 12%. And yeah, sure, you don't want anybody dying of anything, and you know, but at the same time, this isn't the Black Plague, and so I have mixed feelings about it. I hate the quarantine. I think our government is using it to strip us of a lot of rights, and they're saying, you don't expect things to go back to normal. So what does that mean? You're going to be restricting us from this point going forward? Because you know what, people aren't going to put up with that crap.
I tell you, we've been in quarantine, as you call it, lockdown now for a few weeks longer than you. And we're nowhere near ready to come out. Nowhere near ready to come out. And, you know, I hope they don't come out. because there'd be a second wave of this thing. You know, and like you say, you know, okay, the world population, it's only a small amount, but when you see, well, you've got the highest death rate now in the world.
Yeah, well, we're one of those.
I looked at it today. I was talking to Stephen, our, you know, station manager today, and I think it was something like 42,000 or something.
Something like that.
Yeah. That is massive. I know you're a big country, but when you look at where these deaths were...
But here's the thing. There is a lot of questions around how they're coming up with these statistics. If somebody comes in and dies of the regular flu, they're blaming it on COVID-19. Somebody, you know, has a heart attack and dies, they're blaming it on COVID-19. You know, they're really inflating the numbers. So
over here they are checking pretty good. You know, what they've been giving out mainly are the numbers of the people that died in hospitals, but now they're talking about and bringing out the numbers from the care homes. Well, and people that have died in their homes at home.
I don't know if it would make the news over there, but there's a big scandal right here in my county, not just a few miles from here. There was an elderly home, convalescent home, where somebody called in a tip. They had a makeshift morgue with 17 bodies stuffed in one room.
Yeah?
Yeah, that they didn't notify anybody about.
Yeah, that's terrible. That's terrible. But I must mention here about Captain Tom, because a lot of people don't know about Captain Tom. Captain Tom is, at the end of this month, he's going to be 100 years old. So what he did, he done 100 laps. He said he was going to do 100 laps of his garden. He's got quite a big garden, I think, looking at it. 100 laps of his garden on his walking frame, okay, to try and raise £1,000 for our NHS. At the last count, he's raised over £28 million, and the money is still coming in.
Excellent. I mean,
absolutely fantastic, Captain Tom. We love you.
There are some good stories coming in from all of this.
Yeah, there are. And the way people are helping each other, how you're coming together as neighbours and things like that. Not so much in my area, mind you, but still. That's another story. But, you know, there is a lot of good coming out where people are raising money for the NHS. And I hope that money that people are raising for the NHS actually get to the NHS and doesn't get lost in the system somewhere.
Yeah, well, it's just such a mess over here, and so much division, and everybody is blaming everybody else for, like, oh, this person didn't respond quick enough. Oh, this person's at fault. That person's at fault.
Trump did kind of poo-poo it in the beginning, didn't he? He kind of made light of it and said that it was nothing really to worry about. It'll be over by Easter.
In all fairness, Nancy Pelosi went down to Chinatown when this all started and say, oh, there's nothing to worry about. Everybody come on down to Chinatown. We're having a big parade and whatnot. So everybody did this.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone realized how bad it was going to get. So, you know, that's government for you. You know, it's not one party over another. It's none of them were prepared for something like this. Just like one of the scenarios that I've always been concerned about that we have no preparation for whatsoever is if we lose the power grid. You know, and that can happen in a couple of different ways, either by if we're attacked, somebody uses an EMP pulse weapon. You know, explode a nuke high in the atmosphere, completely wipes out our electrical grid, and we're put back to the 1800s. You know, with nothing working. Or the other scenario, and this actually happened in, I think, 1860, 1870, where the Earth got hit by a coronal mass ejection, a big solar flare, that, you know, we didn't have really electricity then, but we did had telegraph wires, and all the telegraph wires burst into flames. And they had to completely redo all the country's telegraph wires. Now, that was just telegraph. Imagine if it hit nowadays. Your computers would be fried. Your house electrics would be fried. The main power grid would be fried.
Everything in here.
Cars would be fried. Trucks, everything. We would grind to a halt, and we have no protection of it.
Yeah. Well, my house would be absolutely useless because everything is electric from the cooker. There's no gas laid onto this village. Everything is electric.
Yep.
So, get the candles out. That's all I can say if that happens. But I don't know. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. It's just... I completely now, since having COVID, right, my idea of life has changed. I'm not so serious anymore. I don't care two hoots about what I say anymore to anybody.
Oh boy, this is going to be fun.
I am not going to be pushed around by that frigging neighbour of mine anymore. I called him a tosser the other day. I'm being more friendly to people out on the street, waving to them, complete strangers, saying hello and everything as they pass by on their daily walks.
Well, you were so sick. I remember you were telling me there was a one point where you were very worried, and
I thought I was going to die.
Yeah, and of course that certainly will change your perspective on life itself.
Yeah, the way I think now, right? If I like something, if people are nice to me, I'll be nice back. If they're horrible to me, I'll become the raving bitch of hell, and I'll take their heads off. I don't care anymore about being, how can I say, behaving myself anymore. I don't care.
When did you ever behave yourself?
Well, I never really ever. But you know what I mean? I don't care. I'll take anyone down that rubs me up the wrong way now.
Yep.
And if they don't rub me up the wrong way and they're really, really nice to me, I'll love them forever, I'll give them everything they want. If I've got it, they can have it.
For every action,
that's the way I'm looking.
There's an equal and opposite reaction.
That's right. Yeah. And I know the first one I'm going to take down. And I am going to take it down and I'm going to destroy it.
Okay, and on that positive love and light note.
Well, sound horrible, don't I? I absolutely sound horrible. Sheila's going to have a go at me.
Yes. So why don't you introduce our guest?
No, you can.
I can?
Yes,
really?
I've got a grape in my mouth.
Oh, yes. Well, you eat while the rest of us actually work here. So we want to welcome our guest who's been on the show before, was also a former member of Irene's group, Spirit Rescue International. She's a spiritual healer and a hypnotherapist. So we want to welcome Sheila Scott to the program. How are you doing, Sheila?
Hi, Mark. Hi, Irene. I'm great, thanks. How is everybody?
Are you going to tell me off, Sheila?
No, not at all.
No?
No. I'm with you.
In other words, what I was trying to say is I'm not going to take any stick from anybody that's nasty to me in future. If anyone's nasty to me, they're going to, get the stick themselves.
That's totally okay.
That's all right. Okay. So how are you, Sheila?
I'm well, thank you. My allergies are kicking up, but it's spring. What can I say?
So how is everything with you dealing with this COVID-19 up there in Ontario, Canada?
Well, I've actually retired from my job in public health, so I retired at the end of March. But it was pretty hairy there for a while when I was actually on the hotline, and I was also on case and contact follow-up for a brief period. Apparently, they're thinking that the curve is flattening and that we've probably peaked it with our cases. So it looks like it may be simmering down, but personally, I think it's going to not happen the way they'd hoped. I think it's going to there's going to be a resurgence of it, and we're going to get a surge. And I'm hoping not. I'm hoping I'm very wrong, but this is what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I try
sorry, Mark.
What's that?
I said sorry.
You should be.
That's not. Lap it up, because I don't say sorry very often.
Not anymore, anyway. You still have to make the comparisons. 100 years ago, we had the Spanish flu epidemic. And I've been seeing some, articles and pamphlets from that time period, which were saying the exact same thing that they're saying today about quarantining people, stay at home, their version of so-called social distancing, which I'm sorry, I hate buzzwords. I hate them. I understand, yes, keep a nice distance from people, but when they throw in a buzzword like that everybody starts using, I can't help but cringe.
Right. So, but before we go any further, Sheila, we heard over here about this shooting you had out there in Canada. Hearts go out to all the victims' families and the people that were involved in that.
Thank you. Yeah, it was shocking.
I have to say, and this shows you how out of it I am, I haven't heard about this. What happened?
Oh.
There was a man who went on a shooting spree on late Saturday night, early Sunday morning, and he ended up killing 23 people in Nova Scotia.
Oh, my God.
He dressed up as an RCMP officer, and he made his van look like an RCMP vehicle. So, and unfortunately, an RCMP officer was shot and killed. A woman was shot and killed. So everybody is in Nova Scotia is in a state of mourning, and I have to say the rest of Canada is too, because this is horrendous. This is the biggest mass shooting we've had, and we can't figure out what happened. He was killed when the RCMP officers tried to arrest him. I believe he was shot or killed or something. I'm not sure of all the details. They're not really telling us, but it is horrendous. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that, Irene.
I'm sorry about that.
Oh, that is terrible.
Really, yeah, it's terrible. Absolutely terrible. I'm surprised you didn't hear about it, Mark. Mind you, you've been busy working, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm working, and I've been trying to stay off the news because it's all COVID-19 all the time. And even on social media, it's all COVID-19 and people fighting back and forth. And, one group all wanting to stay at home for the rest of the year, the other group's conspiracy theories and 5G and it's just utter insanity.
Yeah, well, out in Italy, they were pulling down the towers for 5G.
It's like how much worse is 5G from 4G to 3G? All these different things.
Well, this is it. I should imagine if whatever they've done with 5G, or if they have done it with 5G, they could have done it with 4G or 3G or any other tower.
Yeah, I mean, how bad is it compared to living next to high power lines running through your backyard?
Yeah, well, they do say that, don't they, that there are a lot more cancer deaths or people getting cancer if they're close to the pylons and things like that. If they live close or under pylons or whatever. And I remember when the boys were small, Vodafone, there's a plug for Vodafone, by the way. They can pay me later. Vodafone over here, which was one of the big companies, they wanted to put what are those tower things on top of the bus garage, the local bus garage in where I lived in London. And everyone signed the petitions. Everybody signed the petitions because they were frightened it was going to give off radiation or whatever. I don't know. And they, even in this village last year, they wanted to put one at the back of the farm over here, the cow dairy farm that I lived close by, and people were up in arms about it in the village. So I don't know. But if they can do it through them, if they can do anything through them, then they can do it through other things as well. You know, you don't need to. It doesn't have to be a tower, mobile tower or whatever, a cell phone tower or whatever they call them.
Well, with all the bombardment we get from everything from, electrical lines, all the power tools, cell phones holding it against your ear, to even, all of the satellite signals being beamed down from the atmosphere, and you're walking around, you're getting hit with all that electromagnetic radiation.
Well, that's it. It was a few years ago. Yeah. They were saying about kids on telephones, on mobiles all the time, cell phones. They're scrambling their brains,
Yeah, well, these are the same kids eating Tide Pods.
Yeah, I expect so. Sheila!
Yes.
Save us.
Carried away there. This is what we do. We get carried away. I didn't mean to forget about you.
Feel free to jump in anytime and tell us to shut up.
So what have you been doing since the lockdown, Sheila?
Well, I've been not a whole lot. I do readings, for people, and I'm doing it by Zoom, and I am going to be putting together a hypnosis for childbirth series that I'll be doing by Zoom, because I don't think we're going to be out of this for a while. So yeah, it's just, and I've just been staying sort of quiet at home, and I just go out for groceries, so it's pretty boring. But I've sort of been, putting together stuff that I'd like to see when we are out of quarantine, out of lockdown. And I did one clearing, one house clearing on the weekend that I do it by distance, like just like you did, Irene. And I'm getting more calls for that, I've noticed in the last little while. I think the paranormal stuff is kicking off, and it has been the last couple of years. It's been escalating. So
yeah, and I'm wondering if
sorry, Mark.
No, you go ahead.
Can I just say something about Zoom? Zoom, I cannot get a hang of Zoom. I'm so used to Skype, and I'm so stuck in my ways. But my boys, my son the other day, he got 5 of my grandchildren on Zoom, and we played this game where we had to ask 3 questions. So before we went on Zoom, me and my husband, we went through the 3 questions or 6 questions that we wanted to ask, and we done easy ones because they're all little grandchildren. So-and-so's. The questions that they gave us, we couldn't even answer. How many species of lion are there? I said 2, male and female. Things like that. They were really, really complicated questions. And we had things like, how many decades is Granddad now? How many decades is Granddad? 7, because he's 70. Yeah. And what was it? How many dogs has Nanny got? Well, no, how many pets has Nanny got? It was a trick question, you see, because I got 5 dogs and 1 parrot. And I thought they'd say 5, but, they all came out with 6. And I was giving them these easy questions. And these questions, I'll tell you, the questions that they gave us back, Mark, I'm not kidding you. You'd have to be a blooming, I don't know, university professor or something to answer them. So lo and behold, we lost.
Some of these kids can be very smart.
Oh yeah, they'd prepared. I tell you, they'd prepared. They've been Googling all day. I'm sure of it. Anyway, getting back to where we were. What were we talking about?
Well, she's been doing readings and clearings. Have you been doing them just through Canada and the U.S., around the world?
Just in Canada recently, but I have done clearings and I'll say depossessions around the world, but I'm not getting a whole lot of call for that. But the one on Saturday was I would say a 911 call because there was a 21-year-old boy who was threatening suicide, and there was his friend, his aunt called, and I said, well, you got to get him help. And he is under some sort of care, but they had seen a dark shadow in the house, and they'd actually photographed it, and there was a very weird feeling in the home. So, or a friend had actually photographed it, and there was just a bizarre, sort of really creepy feeling. So I said I would try. I do clearings by donations. I said I would try, and she did report that there was definitely a change in the house. There was definitely a different feeling. So I'm hoping
that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
The atmosphere calmed down and everything.
Yeah.
So how did you feel, really? Because when you were doing it, because I know, obviously being a clearer myself, and like the longest one I done from remote clearing from the UK was New Zealand. And but how did you? It's difficult to explain. I know how I feel when it's happening, what I'm doing, the amount of energy that I'm chucking out on one thing or another, and obviously when it works, right? You get this. Do you know something? I know the words, but they're long words and I can't say them. And you know what I'm like for some long words. I never could say them. You get this kind of come on, Mark. What is it? Euphoria?
Euphoria?
Yeah.
Euphoria.
Yeah. This, you feel absolutely fantastic afterwards because you know you've succeeded.
Yeah.
But the point is, like, unlike you, I gave it up. I've retired. But, you're still a young chicken, aren't you? So.
Youngish.
Yeah. I do miss it, though. And I miss Spirit Rescue International.
I do, too.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, well, of course, you were involved in that, Mark, as well, weren't you?
Yeah, I was going to try to help take it over at one point, but I unfortunately was going through my own issues at the time that just totally sidelined me from pretty much everything.
Yeah. We had people from Germany, America, Canada, Australia. We had them from all over. And it was good. It was good, And when I first started it, I started with a friend of mine who was a nurse. And she was really, really good. And I loved her to bits. Oh, well, anyway, carry on. So, what was your feelings like when you do this then, Sheila?
Well, I always engage the angels in my work. I call on the archangels, and I always tell people, well, the angels do the heavy lifting. So when I was sort of visualizing the place, I could feel like the angel energy and the archangels working, and they nabbed the dark spirit and took her out. It was apparently a female spirit. And then the energy totally shifted, and I asked them to sort of set up a protection grid around the house for 100 feet in every direction, including right down into the basement and below. But when I finished, I felt like there had been a definite shift, and I was happy about it because you're right. There is a sense of like, oh, it's done, and you can really feel it. And the lady, the aunt showed me a picture of the young man, the 21-year-old, afterwards, and you could tell his face had changed. Like he looked happier, and the energy from the photo was different. And she showed me a before and after photo. And he was an identical twin, and his twin was fine, but this young man was not. And you could see a real change in the photo afterwards. So I'm hopeful that it was successful. And but it's
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was.
Thank you. I'm always worried that it won't work, but I like I said, I asked the archangels to help, and they, as I said, they do the heavy lifting, and they are the ones that nab find the spirit, and they do the clearing in, like, the energy clearing in the home. So and that always worked really well for me. So you have a totally different way of doing it. But
I had a total different way of doing it.
Yeah.
It was like I was bilocating into the actual location and coming face to face with this thing. But I always had someone or something with me.
Yes.
Which, it was always from the time I started, it was always standing at the right-hand side of me. And if I got into any trouble, this thing used to zoom in like a rocket and take the thing out. But I suppose it's maybe because I'm a remote viewer and trained remote viewer, I'm able to see into locations. And that's why if you can get this feeling of bilocation. Is that the word? I can't say the frigging word, Mark.
You just did, bilocation.
I know, he's laughing more than likely. Yeah. But it was like actually leaving here and traveling and going. And, I said to a friend of mine in not Texas, where was it? Arizona once. He was putting up security cameras in and television screens or whatever they have in Walmart. And I said to him one day, we were messing around on the telephone, on Skype, and in his lunch break or whatever. And he said to me, prove to me that you can do that. So I said, all right then. When you're going back to work? He said, I'm going back to work now. So I said, okay, you go back to work. And I said, you'll feel me. And within seconds, it was like I was traveling through the air, traveling. And I got to this place and I saw Walmart and I saw the car park, and right outside or very close to the main entrance was a yellow van. Do you know what a van is?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Yeah, a yellow van.
Right.
Okay. Next thing, I'm seeing him up a ladder and there's like a screen he's fitting. And I just made it. It sounds crazy for people that don't know how to do it. But I created this. It was like I went round and round and round and round him very, very fast to cause a wind. And he felt it. And when he came back on Skype, I said, what did you feel? He said, I felt a wind traveling round me. He said, going round and round like this breeze. And I said, you were up a ladder, weren't you? He said, yeah. I said, you were fixing some sort of screen. And he said, yeah. I said, and if you go outside the door now, I said, there's a yellow van. He went outside and he came back. He was on Skype on his telephone. The language was blue. He said, how the bloody hell did you know all that? Easy. And that's the sort of thing that I would do when I was clearing. It was like I was actually moving into the location. I was absolutely in the location. I could see everything that was going on, and I would detect whatever was causing the problem, and that would be it. I'd zap it. Mm-hmm. Do you remember the word I used to always use was zap? I'm going to zap that.
Yeah, the zap, yes. You'd zap it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and that was it. But, it wasn't only down to me. It was Spirit Rescue International. Spirit Rescue International was made up from a lot of talented people around the world. And it was all of us working together that made Spirit Rescue International what it was, successful. But it was hard work. Yeah, it was hard work. Literally hard work. And then we had, she was there before you actually started, JD, who I absolutely adored, JD, because she used to tell me off for the least little thing. If I stepped out of line or I started to doubt myself in any way, she would come down on me like a ton of bricks. JD, and sadly JD passed away, and it took me a hell of a long time. It took me a long time to accept that she wasn't around anymore. She was like a support, like somebody that if I had a problem or I couldn't work something out, doesn't matter whether it was in my own personal life or whatever, JD was always there with the answer. So I miss her, and I miss Sunny, because we lost Sunny as well. Who was a lovely person.
Yeah.
So you've been doing that, and you're getting a lot of enjoyment from doing that.
Yes, very much so.
You're still reading tarot cards?
I do. Yep, I do. And again, I do either by Skype or by Zoom. It's picking up. It's interesting since I retired. It's like the universe said, "Oh, okay, now you've got more free time. I'm gonna send you more clients." So it was interesting how that worked. And so that is, that is picking up definitely. And again, I do ask the archangels and angels to help with the readings as well, because sometimes I'll be stuck and I'll be, oh my goodness, what am I sensing here? And then I'll ask, and I'll either hear or visualize the word or words. That'll be very, I'm taking that is that they're communicating with me. So, I just love working with the angels, and I have for a number of years. And whenever I ask, they're there and they will assist. And I found that a lot of people get hung up on the rituals, of communicating with angels, and they
read in books.
Yeah, they're reading a lot of books, and you have to have this candle and this color and this incense, and it's like, no, that's nice. That's very nice. You just have to ask them, and you just have to say, help me, help me, angels. And you don't have to know their names. Names are a human construct. And you just have to say, please help me, and they will. But angels don't have free will. They're not like humans. They have to obey God's laws and God's rules. And they are not allowed to intervene in our lives unless we ask. And then there's another big thing here is, or if we are in a very dangerous situation that is life and death, and they are allowed to intervene if it's not our time to go. Yeah. So, but yes, by all means, even for small things, ask for help. If you don't know the answer to something, ask, and they will give it to you, or they'll find a way for you. So that's why I just love working with them. And of course, showing appreciation and gratitude is always in order, so after you get what you've asked for, then say thank you, or say thank you in advance. But so I just love working with them very much. And I just want people to know they can let go of all the ritual and all the hang-ups that are around them, because they're not really interested in that. They appreciate the gratitude, but they're not really interested in like what color candle you use or how many chants you say, or it's not
a load of balderdash.
Yeah, well, yeah, just what it is. It just makes us feel better. That's what it does. It makes us feel better about it.
I think there's also because there's some people who, for whatever reason, in order to get themselves into maybe even a slightly trance state, in order to be on that level, the ritual is what helps them get to the state. It's not what's calling the angels or calling the spirits to help. It's putting themselves into that right frequency frame of mind in order to connect, where some people like you and Irene don't need to do that. You already know how to do it without having to go through all the ritual.
Yes, you bring up a good point, Mark. Yeah, that is true. Some people do need that. But when you're, as I was saying, I just want to affirm that what you're saying is correct. But if you're in a very scary situation and you don't have time to do that, but like you just say help,
Well, yeah.
And
can you imagine it though, Sheila? There's an angel up there waiting for you to talk to it because it knows you're going to need the help in advance. And there you are down here, flustered because you can't find your candles. Then you can't find the right colour. And I bet that angel's going, for God's sake, get on with it. And like you say, all you need to do, you don't need all these rituals, all you need to do is turn around and ask.
Yeah.
That's exactly. And obviously sometimes I know that the answers don't come straight away, but they will come. They will come within a matter of maybe hours or a couple of days. You might see a sign out on the road that's giving you the answer, or someone might just come out of the blue and say, oh, da, 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 and you think, Christ, that's my answer.
I agree. Yes, that's true. It very often symbols pop up, and license plates, sayings on them, or finding things or seeing animals in unique animals in unusual places, or if you have a certain code set up, finding dimes or pennies or things like that, then that can be a sign that your message has been received and the answer is coming. So, there's the universe is very symbolic, and the angels often communicate in symbols. Absolutely.
Well, not only that, but whenever I've wanted an answer for anything from a higher power, I've have this code already set up that I know that they are the correct people or correct beings that I'm in touch with by this code, and the code is pins and needles. You know what pins and needles are, Mark?
Yes.
Right. Getting pins and needles in a certain place. If I don't get it in that particular place when I ask for the pins and needles, then that's it. I just cut off completely and won't have nothing to do with it. But if I get it in that certain place, then I know I'm talking or with these higher beings that I've asked the question, or I'm going to ask a question of. But
that's brilliant.
There's pins and needles.
Yeah.
But you're talking about tarot cards. Well, Mark reads tarot cards, don't you, Mark?
Yes, I do. I just haven't. I'm trying to get out of this, what I've been in for the last couple of years, and I would like to start doing it more and doing it more publicly. I mean, I read for myself all the time, and it's always scarily accurate. I just haven't had much of an opportunity to read for others. And now with everything going on and doing everything online, it's something I'm thinking about opening myself up to, because I certainly need the practice. But I've got like 4 or 5 different decks. There's 2 I mainly use that I feel the best connection to. But I've also been, I'm not exactly saying struggling, but I haven't been feeling very connected at all these last several months because of the medical issues I was dealing with and some other things. So I feel very disconnected lately. Yet, if I do some readings, they seem pretty accurate. I also get a lot of synchronicities with numbers. I'm constantly seeing the combination of either 111 or 1111. Or sometimes 444. I'll see those all the time. So there's still some synchronicities going on, but not much else. And so I've just been feeling a big disconnect.
Oh, the 444 is the angels, right? It's the number of the angels.
I didn't know that. And you know what? Oh. That is a concept that I struggle with. I have to admit it. I've always struggled with it. And maybe it's because, in my 20s when I broke away from, organized religion and the church, I kind of rejected all of it. And the concept of angels has always been a sore spot with me, because I've never really fully accepted that concept. I do accept that there are definitely different spiritual entities out there that we deal with, but when we use the term angel, I always associate it with a religious term. Of course, the original translation for angel was messengers. From the Bible. So this idea of these big, powerful beings with white robes and wings and archangels.
They didn't have wings in the beginning, did they?
Yeah, they don't. They don't have wings.
No, they don't. That was something put on in the Renaissance. But, it's one of those things where you look at, through a lot of different religions where, going all the way back to Sumerian times, the combination of humans with animal traits, and the angels with wings is not that much different from, say, a griffin, or Sumerians with the guy's head and the body of a lion, like a sphinx. So that was something that we put together. But again, when I hear the term angel and people talk about Archangel Michael or Gabriel or all these archangels, I cringe. Because
it's a description thing, isn't it? It's easier for people to understand the term angels than what I was trying to explain just now about beings.
Right. Yeah, and do they have, is there specific ones? I mean, everybody talks about, praying to my Archangel Michael. Michael's this, it's Michael that, Michael. It's like, it seems to almost turn it into a godhead. Even though Christianity claims that there's just the one God, but then of course they throw Jesus in that, he's the Son of God, and there's this Trinity. It's like, well, what happened to the one God thing? Anyway, I can rant for days on that, but still, praying to the angels. Again, you see where my conflict is coming from? Coming from this religious indoctrination when I was younger, in my 20s, I totally broke free of it. I actually was kind of bitter for a while until I started finding my way and learning more about spirituality and different concepts, a lot of the Native American spiritual values and Aboriginals spiritual values. So again, it's just the term angels and especially angel names. I just struggle with that.
Yeah, well, humans tend to anthropomorphize everything, right? So angels, we have this concept of them looking like humans, but they're just energy. They're just, and they will appear in any form or shape that is that you would feel comfortable with.
Oh, yeah. And they'll even show up in those white robes and the big wings in order to get...
that's what you're used to. Yeah.
People don't understand.
Well, I used to call Archangel Michael Mickey. Who's Mickey?
Mickey. The spirit world is not above, some people might think of it as a type of deception because they put on an appearance. But that appearance is just so that our minds can understand, or at least help us understand what it is we're dealing with, because their true nature is literally beyond our comprehension. Our little, sacks of meat inside our craniums just isn't wired right in order to fully comprehend what these entities are, what they're made of, where they come from. We think we know. We have rudimentary ideas, but it's still, the concept is beyond our comprehension.
No argument there. Yeah.
I was telling Sheila the other day when we were chatting on Skype about my airport visitor. You're talking about they come in all different shapes, sizes.
Oh,
and
yes,
forms.
the gentleman you picked up on the way to the airport.
Yeah. And how he was complete when I never picked him up. We picked him up, me and Brian. But when I was talking to Brian a week later, because it kept nagging at me, and I turned around to Brian a week later, I said, "Look, this is just weird. We've got to sit down and talk about this." And I said, "You tell me what you saw." And the description he gave of the fella that was sitting in the back seat of our car was totally different man to the description I saw.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
So, and he came from out of nowhere.
And he helped you.
And he disappeared out of nowhere as well.
Yeah, that was fascinating.
Yeah.
Can you share that story?
Oh, I've spoken about it before, haven't I, Mark?
It's been a while, so I'm sure a refresher wouldn't hurt. And Sheila, I don't think Sheila's ever heard it, so.
Yeah, she heard it the other day. Okay, I'll try and give you the abbreviated version. My cousin, my favourite cousin in Scotland, died, and this particular day, it was a funeral. We live in Wales. He lived in Scotland, Glasgow, and we had to fly up on that day. Fly up, go to the funeral, and fly back down. So the airport that we were flying from is 100 miles from our house. So we left early because the flight was at, I think, 6 o'clock in the morning. So we had to book in by 4 or in between 4 and 5 o'clock or something like that for this flight. And so we left early. We were okay till we got to the motorway. We turned off the motorway to Bristol Airport and got lost in the countryside. Totally lost. It was a winter's morning, freezing cold. There was mist in the air and everything. It was absolutely freezing cold. And there we are. It's getting up to 4 o'clock. We should be at the airport. I started to panic. We had no idea where we were or where we were heading. And we were driving along this country lane. There was no houses, no lighting, nothing. It was just a country lane with hedgerows growing along the side of it. It was misty. You could hardly see where you were going. And all of a sudden, out of the mist came this old man. Early hours of the morning, this old man, who looked about 80 years old, is out on this country lane. So excitedly, I said to him, quick, stop the car. There's someone there. Ask him the way. Ask him the way to the airport. Blah, blah, blah. So Brian stopped the car, wound down the window, called over to the old man who came over to the car. And he said, can you tell us the way to the airport? And he said, I can't tell you, but I can show you. And with that, he got in the back seat of the car before we could even say, well, get in, you know. He got into the back seat of the car, and he started giving us directions to the airport. Every village we went through, he'd turn around and say, turn right here, turn left there. But that's the only conversation he had. Okay? So we get to the airport, and we were driving towards the short-term car park. And he said, you can stop the car and let me out here. This was before we got to the short-term car park. You know, we were just about to drive into it. And he said, you can let me out here. And I said, well, how are you going to get back this time of the morning? He said, don't worry. He said, I'll get back to where I was. And of course, I was worried because this was a cold winter's morning, a little old man out on the street, out on the road, and now about 17 miles from where we picked him up. How the hell was he going to get back? So when he said that, I turned and looked at Brian with concern on my face, obviously. Brian looked at me, and when we turned back, he'd gone. And we looked. There was nowhere he could have disappeared to. You know, if he was walking off in the distance, we would have seen him. But, he's vanished, totally vanished. Anyway, we got the plane to Scotland and we went to the funeral, and then we got the plane back. I got a lift back to the airport and came back home on the plane, and one thing or another. But all day long and for the rest of the week, it nagged at me. There was something wrong. And even when he was in the car, sitting in the back seat of the car, I felt that there was something not quite right about it all. And a week later, I turned around to my Brian and I said, like I said just now, what did you see? And he said, I said, give it a description. So he said, well, he was well dressed. He said he was wearing, I can't remember what colour Brian said now, a black jacket. He said black puffer type jacket, a winter warm jacket.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He said his hair was immaculate, and he wore glasses, and he was carrying like a rucksack, and he had a torch. And the person I saw had a dark jacket on. His hair was all over the place like he'd just been dragged backwards through a bush. Right? He never had a rucksack. He didn't have a torch. Completely, and he wasn't wearing glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And, all the time he was sitting in the back of the car, every time he spoke to give us directions, I turned around and looked at him. So I know what he looked like. And it was a totally different person to what Brian saw.
Mm-hmm.
And can only think that he was some sort of it was paranormal. It must have been paranormal. Mm-hmm. And it must have been so that I made that plane to Glasgow for that funeral. It had to be. Because my cousin would have been devastated if I hadn't got there.
Fascinating. That's a fascinating story. And I think the two of you saw two different people because you needed to discuss it afterwards. And
maybe, I never thought of that.
More proof to you that it was something very unusual had happened and very special.
Mm. But this isn't the first time. Mm-hmm. When I was a girl, right, we've always Skyped. Now, people, you're going to think I'm a bad person. me and my friend Christine were always, and Angela as well, when she was with us, was always Skype in school and going up onto the South Downs. Okay, and we'd go up there and spend the day up there. And this particular day, we're walking along this little rocky track that in the south, that was in the side of the South Downs. It wasn't on the top of the South Downs. It was like in the side of the hills, right? And it was a rocky old track. It was, not easy to walk on it at the best of times, even for us kids. You couldn't, And as we got further down, laying on the bank of the side of the hill was a man, and he had a t-shirt on, but that's all he had on, a t-shirt. And there's us young girls who'd never seen anything like that before. Of course, the fear factor jumped in straight away. The flight and flee. So we started running back up this old track, and as we were running up this track, right, there was a little old lady hobbling towards us with a walking stick. This is a really rocky track. And this little old lady, she must have been 90 if she was a day. She's hobbling towards us with a walking stick. And my friend ran straight past her, and I stopped. And I said, lady, you don't want to go down there? And I told her what we'd seen. And she said, don't ever be tempted, dear. That was her words. Don't ever be tempted. And then my friend, who was a bit further up the track, she called me, and I ran up and called her up. She said, what did you stop for? I said, tell the old lady not to go down there because of that bad man down the track, further down the track. And when I turned around, she'd disappeared. She'd gone. And she said to me, what old lady? I said, the old lady on the track. She said, I never saw an old lady. There's no old lady on the track. And that was another one. No, I've had 2 or 3 of them. I've had, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You know, so who are these people?
Yeah.
I don't know. Who are they?
Well, I think the elderly man was there to help you get to your cousin's funeral for sure. That was.
Yeah, I don't know what the other man was there for, but he should have, you know, he's lucky he never got sunburnt.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what happened. No, I don't know what the man on the bank was about, but
it was a flash.
Yeah, interesting.
Oh dear. There you go, Mark. That's the dirty bit.
Now, you see, I'd never really saw anything before. We've seen anybody or whatever. The closest
you may have done. You may not have realised.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Go on. The closest.
I mean, the closest is there have been a few times in my life where I've heard somebody call my name.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of years ago, as I was like in that in-between stage of waking and sleeping, I felt like, and I describe it as a feminine hand, either very matronly or very I don't know. It wasn't in a sexual way at all, but a hand stroked the side of my face, like like a reassuring kind of stroke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It could have been someone that you know that was in spirit for you that came by just to reassure you.
Possibly. Mm-hmm. Possibly. I was going through a bad time at that time.
Yeah, just comforting you.
Yeah, my dad had something like that. We lived in a house in London when I was a kid growing up. It was haunted by Mrs. Hyland, and she would appear. She appeared to many people, you know. My cousins that cousin I was talking about just now, he came down on his motorbike with his friend, and they were sleeping in one of the rooms together, and she appeared beside Jim's bed, and when they got up in the morning they were panicking all over the place because they'd seen Mrs. Hyland and one thing or another. But she had a thing for my dad. She really did. And, you know, he was a train driver, and he'd come off shift in the middle of the night, walk down the road from the station and to the house, and he'd see her standing at the bedroom window waiting for him. At first, wow. when he first saw her, he thought, it was my mother. You know, 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning standing at the window. But then he'd come in and Mum would be snoring away in bed. And occasionally he'd go up to bed. If he was on a late shift, he'd go to bed earlier because he knew he'd have to get up about midnight or one thing or another. And he often told me about she'd appear in the room and she'd stroke his face. You know? And she appeared to me once after I'd been out on a night on the booze. Oh, God, she stood at the bottom of my bed with his shawl wrapped round her, and I thought, no, I can't take this now. So I went under the quilt, and I didn't come back up until morning. But my sister, who was 3 years old at the time, 3 or 4 years old, one night when Dad was going out to work, early in the morning to go drive trains, you know. She got up and she ran to the top of the stairs to say goodbye to him, but she didn't. But when he came home the following day, she said, Daddy, who was that lady that followed you down the stairs last night? And she was, 3 or 4 years old. So, Mrs. Hyland. Yeah, we had a fire in the house, and from that day on, we never saw her again. Once the house caught on fire.
Oh dear.
Yeah, for some reason, she just, just didn't appear again. Anyway, so ghosties. Have you seen a ghost besides feeling spirits, Sheila? Have you ever seen a ghost, or what people call ghosts?
I'm trying to think. I certainly had I certainly had an impression of one walking through me, and then which is very creepy. But she meant no harm, and she did appear actually at night. And I was staying at a friend's house, and it was a Victorian mansion, and the family had bought the coach house, which was where the servants had used to stay. It was part of a big estate in Coburg, and this is back in the 80s, and I was staying, and they said, I'm unfortunately very allergic to cats, and they said, oh, the cats never go into this room, it's okay. And I'm going, that's odd, you can stay in this room, they never go into this room. And that was a red flag right away. And so I unpacked my stuff, and sure enough, the two cats came to the door, looked in the door, looked at me, and then walked away. And I thought, okay. And as I was moving, just going out the door, I felt this cool breeze move through me, and I could almost sense a form. And I went, okay, that's a spirit for sure. And this back in 87. And so at night, I think I mentally said to her, oh, the room apparently had a reputation that the one of the daughters who used to stay in the room, her parents were older, and when the daughter would come down to stay, she would find herself awake and rocking in the rocking chair, and she never did this at home. She never would sleepwalk at home. So I thought, okay, check number 2. And so I was in bed, and all of a sudden I was sleeping, and I heard someone call out, wake up, my name is Anna, wake up. And I looked and I could see her, even though I have bad eyesight, I could see her, and she was wearing a little maid's cap and a little pinafore, and a striped pinafore, clearly from the 1800s. Yeah. And she looked about 20, and I jumped back, hit my head on the headboard. And my friend, my two friends in the other room said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'll tell you about it in the morning." Yeah, so I did. I have seen them, and I saw one time a spirit walk through the wall at one of my apartments, and I went, "Oh, geez," I knew the place was haunted, but I think it had been built in like the 1920s or maybe in the 1910 or something, and it was very old. And I did see a spirit walk through. Yes, I have seen spirits. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I saw one the other day. Well, not the other day, yesterday, actually. In this room. I think it might be my dog, actually.
Oh,
really? I lost a couple of years ago.
Willow?
No, not Willow.
Oh,
Boise, the white German Shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And it was like, oh, God, he was white, and he was a German Shepherd. He was massive. But what I actually saw down by Pickle's cage, it was like a waterfall appeared, right? I'm sitting watching the television. Brian's like stretched out on the sofa, fast asleep. It was like a waterfall of clear water appeared to come down off my desk, down by the cage and on the floor, and then it kind of morphed into some sort of shape and just went across the floor. And the first thing that went through my head was Boise. I told Brian about it tonight, actually, and he said, "Oh, you never tell me these things when you see these things." I said, "Because I don't take no notice of them." You don't, do you? Not when it's been part of your life all your life, and you've grown up with it. It just becomes, And the only reason I told him tonight is because he was watching an old repeat of Ghost Whisperer on the television. Otherwise, I wouldn't have told him at all. But it's Mark's never seen the ghost.
Nope.
No.
Nope. I've caught lots of stuff on video. Definitely lots of EVPs. I've heard disembodied voices, footsteps right next to me when there's nobody there. That's always fun. But a lot of what I deal with, And even during some investigations where I'll start picking up on stuff, tuning in, but it's rarely visual. Everything I experience is either auditory or, I'll just come into a knowing of a situation.
Yeah.
Like, and I've mentioned this one before. There was one time when my wife and I were watching TV in this one house we were living in, and there was something about that house. It wasn't haunted, but I think it was in an area where there was a portal, because there seemed to be people coming and going. And one night we were watching TV, and all of a sudden we just got the strongest sensation that somebody was standing way back in the dining room, just standing there staring at us. And couldn't see anything, but I just got the impression of like a burly guy with either very short hair or bald, wearing, those tan coveralls, workman coveralls, just standing there staring at us. And it lasted several minutes, and then it finally went away. Like I said, never saw it, but that was the image that popped into my head.
Oh yeah, that's a psychic image.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But don't. Yeah,
Sorry.
but don't. I was going to say, don't you hate it when they just stand and stare at you? I've had that out on the street where I've seen one standing there just in front of me, or or just a bit up the road, just staring, and they're not real. They're not living. You know it. But there you go.
Oh, what about?
Mind you, a lot of the stories I've said tonight, except for my cousin, the one on my cousin is in my book, Among the Spirits. Get that plug in.
Well, what about that one story that's in your book that we've talked about when we talked about the Jack the Ripper case when you were younger? Yeah. That's strange. Who was it? What was her name you thought you came across?
Annie Chapman.
Annie Chapman.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, but I'm not sure it was Annie Chapman. This was a Victorian woman from that period. And I can't swear that it was Annie Chapman. It's just that everything fitted. The whole experience fitted. Mm-hmm. So did I see Annie Chapman? I don't know. But what I picked up from this spirit, she kept saying about a fountain and one thing or another. Turns out that Annie Chapman's brother was called Fountain.
Whoa.
Weird name, but there you go. But there are a hell of a lot of stories in there. There's a little boy that I used to live in Crystal Palace, ex-boyfriend's house, and there's a plague burial ground up there, and as I was walking past that, loaded up with shopping one day, this little boy in tatters was standing there. It was in them days. I'm going back now, 40 years. In those days, you couldn't go into this little area. It was more like it made into a garden with a bit of grass and flowers. It was dedicated to the people of the plague, because that was a plague burial ground. Mm-hmm. And I looked through the railings at this little boy in there and everything, and I just knew that he was a spirit, so done the business. But there was, there are so many stories in that book about what I've done in my life, in those early lives of being from a child and one thing or another, and not only clearings, but other things like investigations and things like that. It's I don't know. I haven't even looked at the book for years, Mark. Is it a good book or not? What do you think?
It's a very good book.
You edited it.
Very good. Very interesting.
I read it, but I honestly can't think of I read it and I remember being very impressed with it and thinking, wow. But I couldn't name a specific chapter in it or anything, but I remember reading it, and I read it, I think, all in one sitting. I was enthralled.
Yeah?
Oh,
yeah.
It's been several years since you wrote it.
Yeah, well, it has been, hasn't it? It's been a long time.
Yeah.
I know there's a chapter about Hampton Court in there, and also about when I used to, as a child, travel up to Glasgow on the old steam trains, the Royal Scot, I believe it was, and my aunt and uncle lived in an apartment that overlooked the salt market. And it was called the Salt Market. It was where the fish came in, you know. It was like the fish, and then the restaurateurs would come and buy the fish and all that sort of thing. And the fish would come in early in the morning. And you'd hear all these early in the morning, you could hear all these crates being moved and these trolley things with crates on it being wheeled along the road and everything. And my uncle worked down there. He'd get up early in the morning and he'd go down there and he'd help out down on the fish market and salt market. And I'd look out the window to wave to him, and it wasn't only him. I was seeing generations of people that worked down there, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, literally generations going about doing their daily jobs and one thing or another. People that are from the past, Victorian people, all doing the same thing, moving the fish and, you know. And I used to just watch it all, wave to my uncle. Amazing place, Glasgow. Love it. Yes. Anyway, that's Among the Spirits by Irene and Mark.
Yes.
So, Sheila, when are you writing your book?
Yes.
Oh, boy. I don't know. Thank you for asking. I don't know.
I told her the other day she should write a book.
Well, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what topic, or just a hodgepodge of my experiences. But yeah, maybe one day. Thank you.
Just try it on your life, Sheila.
Oh,
how it's all progressed, how all this came about, and what you do now.
Yeah, I don't know whether anybody would be interested in that. I mean, certainly
you'd be surprised.
Weird stuff, maybe, but and there certainly was that. Especially when I was growing up, I had a number of UFO experiences, and when I was a teenager, and that was.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So let's talk about that.
Okay. All right. I'm not crazy.
Well, didn't think you would be. I mean,
that's me.
You're not crazy either.
We've had a lot of UFO experiencers on the show. Whitley Strieber probably being the biggest name I think we've had on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know Whitley. Yeah. Well, the first occurrence was when I believe I was 12, and my mother and my sister and I, we lived our home with my dad and brother, and we lived beside Crown Land, which is basically scrub or bushland. And there used to be a road that went from my hometown of St. Thomas to London, Ontario, but it got closed off, and they built a highway. And so there was a road that went through, and we actually were very lucky growing up. Both my sister and I had ponies, and I had a new pony, and we were, I was just getting used to him. So we went for a walk, and my mother came with us down the road, and all of a sudden, all three of us looked up, and there was two flat silver discs that did sort of an arc from right to left above our heads, and they did classic, silver discs, and we both kind of gasped, and I said, my mother kind of gasped, and I said, what was that? And she said, I don't know. And we went back and told my dad, and he said, oh, it was probably some, Air Force military thing. I went, no, I don't think so. Then that was when I was like 12 and a half, 12. We went to, the next one was when I was 15. this is probably the more dramatic one. It was Thanksgiving in Ontario, in Canada, and my brother went to a private school. We actually all went to private schools, and there was 2 boys from Mexico who didn't have any place to go for Thanksgiving. So my mother said, well, they can have a Canadian Thanksgiving at our house, and Thanksgiving is the second Monday of October. So it was evening. We were trying to communicate with them. They didn't speak a lot of English. It was interesting. And all of a sudden, my sister and I decided we had to run down. We had to go down to the old scrubland, the bush, which was really literally beside our house. And so she went running down this is at night. This is like about 9 o'clock at night, pitch black. She went running down the road, down a driveway, and the 2 Mexican kids ran after her for some reason. We have no idea why we suddenly decided we had to go. And I was stuck back home pulling on my boots. And I was going, wait for me. And I just got my boots on, and I was running down to try to catch up with them, and they were running back. And the Mexican kids were saying something in Spanish. They were quite excited. My sister had this really weird look on her face. She said, we saw something in the sky. She said, don't go down there. We saw something in the sky. And so anyway, I thought, well, I have to go see this for myself. So I ran down and into the road, the bushland, and I'm looking and go, well, there's nothing here. And all of a sudden, I was looking towards one of the large hills, and we called it Indian Hill, and it was the tallest point in that area, I believe. And all of a sudden, I saw this huge thing it was huge. It was sort of squarish, but it was lit up. It was sort of like pink. I don't have no idea, pinky white. And it came around and it circled the hill and disappeared. And I went, oh my God, what was that? And I was waiting. I thought I was waiting for something else and waiting for something else to show up. And I looked to, I guess it would have been my right. And I turned and I looked up, and it was pitch black, but all the stars were out, and all of a sudden the stars blacked out in one part of the sky. And I went, oh, what's that? And this dark image, saucer shape, started coming down the hill very close to me. And I looked at it and I went, I was pinching myself. I was actually pinching myself going, this can't be happening. This isn't happening. Like, wake up, like this isn't happening. And so I watched as this thing suddenly it was pitch black. You couldn't see, you can just make out the outline of it. Then some green and red lights rotating clockwise around it appeared. And I went, give me a break. I think I said something that, really? Like, it was like, and
come on, own up, Sheila. You said the F word, didn't you?
Probably.
I know. I
remember going, like, I was still pinching myself.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to them in my mind, saying, I'm not going with you. Like, forget it. Like, I'm not going. And as soon as I said that, I was probably about maybe 100 feet away from it. Wow. I was quite close to it, and it was hovering about 10 feet above the ground. And I said, I'm not going with you. And as soon as I said that, it clicked off like a light. And then I got what I consider was the screen. Like, it was clearly not. It was not what it appeared, and it appeared to be this bright, sort of almost Easter egg thing on end with like rotating lights and white and blue lights. And I went, oh, nice try. It was like that. I knew that wasn't real. Like, that was like a parting shot or something. Like, so it was interesting. And I went back to the house and I told my sister, and she said, I don't believe you. But anyway, that was fine.
So do you think then that it was actually going to come for you, and you had this built-in instinct that you knew it wanted to go with you, it wanted to take you, and that's why you said, I'm not going with you?
I just had this feeling that they were interested in that, and I thought, nope, I'm not going with you. And and as soon as I said that, they laughed. I almost angrily. Like it was. So,
you got that feeling, yeah?
Yeah. Well, I had the feeling that they were ticked off. So, anyway, and then a few after that. One was I was driving. I had a part-time job, and I was driving to my part-time job, which is across St. Thomas. So borrowed the family car, one of the cars, and drove. And I was stopped at a stoplight, and all of a sudden I looked up, and there were 4 Air Force jets on the tail of this shiny diamond-shaped thing, very, very shiny diamond, and it was in front of them, and it was literally they were on its tail, and I gasped, and there's a guy pulled up beside me in another car, and there's passenger side, and I'm pointing, look at that, and the passenger looked up, he gasped, and I said, pull over, pull over, and it's so. I wanted to confirm what I had seen, right? Yeah. And they did stop, but then I was getting out of the car, and then they pulled away again. I guess they thought, no, we're not going to talk about it. And the final one that I can remember was I was sitting on my bed, and I was studying for my history exam, and at that point we had grade 13 in Canada, and I was studying for my history exam, and I was bored out of my mind. And the next thing I knew, it was not my favorite topic. The next thing I knew was face forward in my book, and I couldn't move. And I thought, oh my God, I've had a stroke. And the lights were on.
Your head was in your book?
Yeah, I was, because I was sitting cross-legged on my bed, and I was. The book was in my lap, and the next thing I knew, I was I'd literally fallen forward, and my face was in the book. Yeah. I was younger and thinner at that point.
More bendy.
Much more bendy.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God, I've had a stroke. How do I call for help? I could move my eyes, and then I thought, okay, so what's going on here? And I turned my head, and I could see outside. The lights were on in my bedroom, and the curtains were drawn, but I could see 2 lights bobbing up and down outside my window. And they were just small lights. And my first thought was, oh, they've come for a visit. I'm going, and then afterwards, why would I say that? So, and eventually the feeling returned, and I was able to move. And I thought, if I turn off the light, I'll probably be able to, in my room, I'll probably be able to see them. So I reached over, I flicked off the light, and of course they disappeared. But it was like, that was weird. That was just really weird. So yeah, I've had a number of experiences. But.
Have you ever experienced missing time?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think I have, but I can't quite say exactly how. But I'm just going to say yes. But yeah, I have, and I'm trying to think when. But I would do something, and then I would be doing something, and it could have been just I was in a hypnotic state, and then how you lose track of time, and then you sort of come back, and all of a sudden, oh my God, 2 hours have passed. My sister did. She mentioned that to me. That she'd lost time about 2 hours at one point when she was driving, and she pulled over to the side of the road, and the next thing she knew, her head was down on the steering wheel, and she woke up, and it was 2 hours later. So, yeah.
Now, I'm currently reading a book by Preston Dennett about UFO encounters, people being taken aboard. In fact, Preston Dennett's going to be on our show next week. So looking forward to talking to him. But one of the stories he talks about, I have to chuckle because literally it takes place 2 to 3 miles from where I grew up. in the San Fernando Valley in California, around the Hanson Dam area, just next to San Fernando. And this guy back in the 60s and 70s, when I grew up, I had no idea there was so much UFO activity going on all around me at that time and in that area. And reading his accounts of this one, which I can't wait to talk to him about, there were a lot of sightings throughout L.A., or the San Fernando Valley area, and I never saw anything. Now here's what's funny. I've never seen a UFO other than a couple of years ago, and I've told this story where I saw these string of lights, here in New Jersey going past, and I'm still not convinced it wasn't some types of drones, although it was the formation, the way they were flying. I couldn't hear anything, but I was still driving. I couldn't pull over and watch. There's about 15 to 20 of them, and flying in a line, kind of in formation. But they seem to be going a long distance for drones. So I don't know. All I can say is they're unidentified. But yet, before that, I've never seen anything in my life. Yet my identical twin brother, he used to see crap all the time. He saw these one time when we both worked at Six Flags Magic Mountain. One night he was working, he looked up and he saw these like 2 or 3 lights, and they were like doing this dance around each other, swirling around and twisting and turning as they were moving across the sky. Obviously not an aircraft or even a satellite.
Wow.
So, fascinating stuff.
One day, Mark, you'll see something.
Yeah. Well, you live in UFO Central there in your valley.
Yeah. I used to put my friend outside. I had a friend and her husband come and stay, and she used to come to experience this house and one thing or another, but she was also into UFOs, and to entertain myself, I used to shove her outside. One night I shoved her out, made her sit on the patio. I gave her a blanket, a cup of tea, and I came back in and locked the door and locked her out there, and I told her she wasn't coming in until she'd got a film of a UFO. Do you know she did? She got something. And you're talking about the ones dancing that your brother saw. Well, above the dairy farm at the back here is on a hill, and up above the hill in the sky, my friend, myself, and her son actually watched these things doing exactly the same thing out there. And somewhere hidden in one of these computers is the film of that as well.
Huh. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, our friend Tony Topping has been posting. Yeah. He's been having a lot of UFO sightings lately, and he's been filming them and posting them on Facebook.
Is he? Yeah. No, I haven't. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there actually seems to be a lot of sightings going on lately. They seem to have increased recently.
Yeah, maybe it's this COVID thing.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe I've been seeing a lot more footage and a lot more mention of it on social media than I remember in the past. But then again, we're quarantined. We're on social media so much, because what else is there to do?
Well, I've been gardening a lot, so I haven't been on there very much. But last night I did drag Brian down to the bottom of the garden, sit on a swing down there. We got a swing seat. We weren't both on the same swing. It was one of the, never mind. Anyway, because there was a comet shower at 10 o'clock here last night.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we sat out there and you could see these little sparks going off in the sky, but nothing spectacular. I was quite disappointed because it was a really clear night. The whole sky was full of stars, but where this particular comet shower was, all I saw was these little sparks. You know?
Yeah.
So Anyway, that was that. So that was a disappointment. And they mentioned it was going to happen at 10 o'clock and what direction it was to look in on the news. A bit of a washout, actually. Had a good swing on the seat, though.
It wasn't a total waste then.
No, it wasn't a total waste. Yeah. So, Mark, you can take over.
Okay. Well, actually, Sheila, I wanted to ask you a little. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your hypnotherapy.
Oh dear.
Okay.
You know, how long have you been doing hypnotherapy, and what do you specialize in?
Locking me out.
Oh, you were very easy. I didn't have to work at all. I was certified in 2004, so I've been doing it for a while. My passion is actually hypnosis for childbirth and smoking cessation. And I've sort of narrowed it down now, like to those two areas. And also like helping people who are upset or worried about something and sort of tapping into their own like changing brain chemistry through hypnosis, because that happens automatically when you're in hypnosis. You actually start producing more endorphins, and endorphins are nature's morphine. So it's actually, endorphins are between 18 and 20 times more powerful than morphine, and it's natural. And just going into the hypnotic state, your body starts to release endorphins, so it makes you feel very relaxed and usually in a good place. Feeling well. They're non-addicting, and what I like is with the endorphins, like helping women have births that are not as painful as they normally would be. I can't promise totally pain-free birth. Some women do have very minimal pain or no pain, but with the hypnosis, it helps them to go through labor faster. And generally, women who use hypnosis have a much faster labor. Their labor is usually about 5 to 6 hours long. And if it's their second or third time mom, it's usually faster. So it is something that people have to practice before they go into labor, and they have to be dedicated to it. So I just provide the training around how to do self-hypnosis during labor. So that's sort of my passion now. I was kind of a generalist for a while, and if people ask me for a specific thing, I will do that for them. But those are the two areas I kind of focus on, is smoking cessation and childbirth.
Have you ever attempted to do like past life regressions?
Oh yeah, I can do past life regressions. Yeah, that's. I'm trying to figure out how to do them through Zoom. It can be done. It can be done, actually. I actually went on the National Guild of Hypnotists website, and they have a whole protocol for hypnosis, doing hypnosis over virtual hypnosis, so Zoom or Skype. And that made me feel better. With past life regressions, it can be done, and I'm probably will be doing that as well, adding that to my repertoire. I've studied past life regressions a number of times. I've got a number of certificates around that. And I have talked with other hypnotherapists, and they seem a little worried about doing it over Zoom or Skype, because if people have an ab reaction. Sorry?
Oh, it was just an odd reaction, did you say?
Sorry, it's called an ab reaction, meaning they go, well, it is an odd reaction, actually. They can actually become very panicky, and they can, it can happen in any hypnosis session where they sort of lose control, and they don't know where they are, and they panic. And I did learn a verbal cue for them to help people come out of it. So I'm just, I guess I'm waiting for someone who wants a past life regression over the internet. I'd be happy to do that for them.
There you go, Mark.
You can experiment on me.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Mark.
We could try that sometime.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that with you.
Sure.
No problem.
I'll be your guinea pig.
Okay. I actually did a certificate in metaphysical hypnosis, so interlife hypnosis, past life regression, and spirit release, which is another one of my passions too, which is people who have attached entities, connecting with them through hypnosis and getting rid of the attachment. So that is an area some hypnotists and hypnotherapists will not go to, but I'm not worried about stuff like that because I know I've got help in the other side that I can call on. But so like spirit releasement, I did the three certifications for metaphysical hypnosis. So
see, I actually learned a version of that when I was going through my shamanic practitioner training. There was something called depossession. Which
is exactly it.
Yeah, really, really fascinating. I got to watch that in action, and it was a very moving experience.
It is, and it is. It's really quite beautiful when you see. Well, I had it happen spontaneously, actually, with one of my first past life regression clients, and I don't know if we have time. I could talk about that. It was probably one of the most dramatic things I've seen. Do we have time?
Yeah, sure. We have about 15 minutes left.
Oh, okay. Is that okay, Irene? Can I talk about that?
Sorry, I was
eating grapes again.
Just checking. I was just checking about. I talk about a depossession, a spontaneous depossession that I did. I was doing a past life regression with a gentleman in person, and he'd come to me a number of times for stress management, and I was doing stress management. He was feeling a lot better, and he said, "Oh, I want to do a past life regression." I said, "Sure, I'd be happy to." So he went into hypnosis very quickly, and I said, "Now go back to the, time that he seemed to think that he had a connection with something to do with his father, and he wanted to find out what the issue was with his father, and go back and." I knew he was in deep hypnosis, and he said out loud, he said, "I am not going back there." And I went, "Pardon?" He said, "I am not going back there. You can't make me do it." And I went, "But you're paying me to do a past life regression." Like I was kind of like surprised. And then I realized his whole demeanor had changed, and he was now become kind of obnoxious. And he said, "You can't make me do anything." And I said, "You're right, I can't. This is your session." And then all of a sudden I realized that it wasn't the person, and I thought there's somebody else here. And I was shocked because I had never, this is the first time I'd ever run across, I'd read about it. And I said, "Are you so-and-so? He goes, "No." And I went, "Okay." I said, "How did you, so you're in Mr. So-and-so's body?" And he said, "Yeah." And I went, "Okay." And I was trying to record it, and my hands were shaking so bad. I don't think I recorded the other half of it, because it was on the time we were using cassettes. Remember those? So, and he said, I said, you can't make me leave." And I went, "Yeah, you're right. I'm not a priest." And I thought, how the hell am I going to get rid of this guy? And he said, he got very aggressive with me, actually, and quite threatening. And he actually opened his eyes and looked at me, and he said, "You can't make me do anything." And kept repeating that. I said, "You know what? You're right. I really can't. I just want to know what happened. What happened to you?" And he said, "Tell me how you lost your body." And he went back to, I believe it was England or maybe France, and he was a serf, and it was he didn't know what year it was, but he was working in the fields, and he was very sick, and he kind of keeled over, and the lord of the manor came over, realized that he was, not working and realized he was very sick, took out his lance and dispatched him. And he was really angry, and he jumped into the Lord's body. And then when the Lord died, the Lord of the Manor died, he was sort of skipping around from body to body throughout time. And I said, do you know what year it is? He goes, no. And I said, do you know what year it was when you lost your body? He said, no. And I said, well, it's 2005. And that didn't mean anything to him, right? So he I said, that must have been awful. How I thought the only way I could, like, empathy, like, oh, that's horrible. What a horrible way to die. And that was terrible. And, you died alone and you were basically murdered. And this is horrible. And he started to soften up. And I said, have you heard about the light? I thought I'd get into him now. And he said, yeah. I said, can I ask you a couple of questions? I said, did you like, what do you do with so-and-so? Like, do you make him do things? And he goes, not really. And I said, well, are you, like, can you make him do anything? He says, no, I can't really. So I'm leading him into the question, right? And I said, well, wouldn't you like to have your own body again? Like, he goes, well, yeah. And I said, well, I can help you, I can help you get another body. And that's when I said, have you heard about the light? And he goes, well, yeah. And so I said, well, let's call some friends from the light for you and see, then, you can just sort of, let's call the light in. So we called in the white light. And I said, can you see it? He goes, yes. And I said, can you put your hand in, And he goes, just touch it. So I saw his arm come up, my client's arm come up, and he reached out and he actually put his hand into something. And I said, what does it feel like? He says, oh, it feels really nice and warm. I said, can you hear your name being called? And he said, yes. He wouldn't give me his name. I said, do you see friends in the light? He said, yeah. And I said, well, why don't you just take their hands and go with them? And you know what? You can always come back if you don't like it. So he did. I saw my client lean forward and, like, as if he was being pulled, and then fall back into the recliner, and then give a big sigh. And I knew the spirit was gone. And before he left, I said, before you go, can I ask you one thing? He goes, yeah. He said, are there any more in there? He goes, oh, I can't say. And I thought, oh, what a jerk. But anyway, so I thought, because I want to get rid of them all, right? And so then he he put his hand in, and then he went, he felt someone touch his hand, and he went, and he left, and I saw the release, right? And I said to my client afterwards, I said, you may want to have a couple of glasses of wine before you listen to this. And I said, it wasn't a past life regression, it was something else. It's all fine now. And I never heard from that guy again. Like, I didn't even know what to do with to follow up with him. I wasn't sure, but yeah, it is quite dramatic. You're absolutely right. Mark, it really is. So, well, it's
one of the things when I was in training that they talked about is like people with addictions.
Yes.
Some people that my teachers always used to say that when you're having drinks, the first 2 drinks are for you. Any other drink you're having after that, you're drinking for somebody else.
Good point.
And, for people who are alcoholics or whatnot, a lot of it, and I'm not saying this is true of all alcoholics, but in some cases, if they do have a spirit attachment of someone who liked alcohol in life and they're attached to somebody and they're trying to live, desperate to relive that taste and experience through somebody else. And I remember one story they told. They had this woman who they were working with that was a bad alcoholic. She was always constantly craving alcohol, and they were going to do oh, good Lord. What was it, like a soul retrieval, and they wound up also doing a depossession. And the woman told him, well, what's going to happen is when we're done here, I'm probably going to drive right down the road and go to the nearest bar. And they go, okay. They worked on her. They did their ceremony, and at the end of the ceremony, the woman drove home. She drove right past the bar, and she never drank again.
Amazing! Wow.
Very good. Very good. Was that your bird just now? Because you got my pickles a bit excited here.
Yeah, he got excited there for a minute too. I'm not sure what got him going there. Yeah, my apologies. Yeah, that's Sunny.
I think Pickles enjoyed it.
It's distracting him from his ball.
Yeah.
Yes.
You want to see what he's doing on his perch. Oh dear. No, that's really good, that.
Fascinating. Thanks, Mark. That's a fascinating story. Yeah, it's I truly believe that that's true. Like, yeah, people who can't stop drinking, in my opinion, they have attachments. Absolutely. Or they can't stop using drugs.
Well, and that's something to think about, because it runs in families sometimes too. I have a very good friend of mine who is an alcoholic. He suffers from binge drinking. His mother was a terrible alcoholic, and and he was into drugs and he had alcohol, and he was clean for a long time, and then he just recently fell off the wagon. Now he's getting clean again, and you wonder if it's is it somebody who's predispositioned to it due to genetics, or is it maybe there's an attachment coming through the family, or it's just something in their wiring that makes them have addictive personalities. Could be a combination of all of that.
When I was working I was working at AIDS prevention back in the day in 1989 with public health. We had a needle exchange. We had the first needle exchange in Toronto. Actually, I think probably one of the first legal ones in Ontario. And one guy came in, and I could see clairvoyantly that he had about 6 spirits attached to him, and they were all yelling at him, going, "Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up! Get the needle, get the needle!" And I thought, oh my God, this poor man. Like, that shocked me. It was like, but I could see clairvoyantly that he had all these attachments to him. And it was very disturbing. So I thought, anyway. So that was my one and only. And then I sort of shut down my clairvoyance at that point. I don't want to see this anymore. It's disturbing.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who have those gifts that they turn away from it because it either scares them. They're not sure what to do with it. I know one gentleman here that I met here in North Jersey a couple years ago. In fact, we were just talking about him before the show, Irene, who I think is a very, very strong intuitive or psychic, but he's afraid of it. Scares him to death, and he rarely does anything with it. I think he started to work with some people now. Come out of it. He has some Native American heritage in his background. But yeah, for the longest time, just scared him, and he didn't want to deal with it, so he tried to ignore it.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah.
And there's those of us who want to fine tune things and learn more, and doesn't work.
And there's those of us that retire and go into radio.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. You know when you've had enough.
Yep. Absolutely.
You get to reach that point where it's just time to relax. You've done enough.
Yeah.
But you know what? Unless, of course, something comes along, you never know what, spirit is going to throw your way. That, they might have something in mind for you.
True. That's very true. Yeah,
I wouldn't turn down a needy case. Even now, I wouldn't turn down a needy case. But I've done my bit as far as I'm concerned.
See, I got a little discouraged.
60 years is long enough.
The last couple of cases we worked on, I got a little discouraged because, especially when we dealt with that one that one girl. Oh, where was she from? She was in northern Wales, I believe.
Oh, yeah. Well, she wouldn't listen, would she?
No, she ripped us a new one. She did not like what we had to say whatsoever. I mean, she publicly, we scared the crap out of her, I think, because we wouldn't tell.
No, I don't think we scared her.
Well, we didn't.
We just told her the truth, what was happening.
Yeah, she didn't want to hear it.
No, she didn't want to hear it. She wanted to be seeing spirits.
Not only
I
spirits.
think I remember that.
Yeah, evil spirits. Yeah.
I think you worked on it with us, Sheila.
Yeah.
The Talper case.
Yes. It
Yeah.
was her.
She was the one causing all of this.
Yeah.
And
Poltergeist. Yeah.
she refused to believe it. And when we talked to her, she was okay at the time when we talked to her. But then it was afterwards what she sent us the really nasty message. Her and her boyfriend sent us nasty messages through the website.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, she wouldn't hear the truth. She wanted to be a psychic. She wanted to be seeing all these spirits all over the place when it was her own self that was causing these things.
Yeah. You mentioned something a few minutes ago, and I absolutely agree. It was like her own energy that was creating.
Yes.
That was creating all of this. And, she was very suggestible. Like her boyfriend kept saying, oh, I feel like there's a spirit of a young boy on the stairs. And what happened shortly afterwards? She started seeing a young boy on the stairs. So some psychic she went to told her that there were witches used to practice in her basement, which, hey, she didn't have a basement, but, go figure.
She believed it.
But she believed it, and the next thing you know, she was seeing this hag witch threatening thing at the top of her stairs.
Yes. Okay, yeah, I remember that, yeah. Oh, boy.
And you know what was funny is her boyfriend would see it too, so she was physically manifesting these images.
I think he was egging her on.
Oh, yeah, they were feeding off each other. Completely feeding off each other.
Yeah, it was all too many television programs and things like that. Mm-hmm.
And that's the danger that we have when we're trying to help people. And I dealt with that, when I had my paranormal group here in Jersey, is dealing with people who, first of all, have either watched one too many ghost shows.
Yes.
Or they have something in their mind and they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear anything different. They just want to believe what they want to believe. And if you tell them something different, then they get mad at you.
Exactly. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, one of the last cases I worked on, there was this woman was convinced her house was haunted. And yet, we found no real evidence. She thought her son was being possessed because he started having these violent outbursts and his personality changed. Well, you know what? He was, I'm sorry to say, he was an asshole teenager rebelling. and then mom, we found out later, was literally on California Psychics like 4 or 5 days a week.
Oh,
talking to different psychics all the time, and then either they or she convinced herself because of it that there was something in the house, and there was nothing in that house.
Yeah. Was that the lady with the scratches?
Not scratches. It was they had T-shirts being torn up.
Oh, T-shirts.
And that's the only odd thing we never really fully explained. Whether somebody was doing it, maybe the son, because he was acting out, was doing it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. They were doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, or whether there was really T-shirts being torn up at all.
Well, I saw the T-shirts. I saw them. They brought them out and showed me. But, again, that's not proof of anything.
They were ones they made earlier.
Yeah. That's not proof of anything, so who knows?
That's it.
Well, you know what? We've actually come to the end of the show.
Oh, Sheila, you'll have to come on again.
Oh, thank you, Irene. Thank you, Mark. It's been lovely. Thank you very much for having me.
Now, Sheila, do you have a website or a specific page that if people wanted to get in touch with you or schedule a reading?
Yeah, it's angel-intuitive.ca.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Sheila, thank you for coming on. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Mark.
It's been too long.
Thank you so much, Irene. Thank you very much.
Yeah, don't go away, Sheila.
Okay.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to another edition of Paranormal UK Radio, the flagship show here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. You can catch us at paukradio.com, and you can also catch our podcasts on our website and all Podbean, Stitcher, iTunes, and where else, Irene?
TuneIn, TalkStream Live, all over the place.
All over the place. So
literally all over the place. How come you never ever mess up saying that?
Because I'm a professional.
Professional.
All right. Well, everyone, we will see you all next week. Stay safe, and we will talk to you soon. Have a good one.
Yeah, and keep your distance.
Yes.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.